great place. So yeah, I'm Pete English. I've been a youth worker. Some of you might relate to this, where you've got the children of the original people that you used to work with. So I have schools where I've worked with I've had the children in my youth group, and then I've worked with their children at school. Yeah, that's how long I've been doing youth work. So I was always drawn to working with the children who were struggling when I used to do youth work. I worked for Agape in their schools ministry for 20 years, and then left there and set up a charity that worked with children affected by loss. So family breakdown and parental separation, family breakdown and bereavement, parental separation and bereavement. And we ended up working in 13 schools in Solihull and Birmingham. And then I trained as a counsellor, and I'm an accredited member of BACP and also ACC. And my week is geared around working in 3 secondary schools, 2 primary schools, and then running training events on Eventbrite through ataloss.org, which is a charity, a signposting charity for the bereaved. My job is heading up a department called Listening People. A department, it's me basically, not a department. Myself and my colleague, my colleague who does all the techie stuff when we do webinars. So if you want what we're running at the moment every month, and they're only £10. We have a grant from a charity that helps with the cost. So we do a 2-hour introduction to young people and bereavement. So if you go on the ataloss.org website, you should be able to find them there, or Eventbrite, they'll be on there. So we're doing an introduction, and then we just started doing a level 2 for those who haven't had enough and want a bit more. But so yeah, I mean, Lynn said earlier about talking about trauma. It's the same with bereavement. Do look after yourselves, and you know, there might be things that I say that touch a nerve, and it's different when you're doing these online webinars, isn't it? You can't have a little chat with somebody. You've all got to look after yourselves. So what I wanted to do is basically talk through. I wrote two workbooks. This one about parental separation I wrote a few years ago, but this one I wrote more recently about someone who's died. So about young people and loss, and they are on the, you can get those from the ataloss website. So I thought I'd talk through this because it's a really good resource, give you a few more resources as well, rather than spend the whole time talking about theory. You know, I know you would like some actual things that you can use with young people, and then hopefully we'll have some time to answer your questions as well. So I'm going to try sharing my screen, which is always the nerve-wracking thing when you're doing any training. Let's see how we go. You should see something that says making a memory box. Do we have any nods? Yeah, got a thumbs up from Alison. Excellent. Yes, so I thought I'd take you through this and sort of talk a little bit about some theory, and why there are sheets that are in here, why we've chosen to do certain subjects. The graphic designers thought it'd be quite amusing to do their depiction of what I look like, which I didn't agree with, but that ended up in the finished copy. So it's a very simple to use little workbook that I've used with children from 9 years old up to, I've dipped into it with year 11s, 16-year-olds. So the ideas in it can be used across a wide age range. My son-in-law's a primary school teacher, and he's looked at it. He actually said he would use it with younger children as well. So it starts off basically just a little discussion starter for you to get to know the children, just a page where they can tell you their likes and their dislikes, and thinking for them to think about who have they got around them who can support them. So you can do that in various ways. You can just get a piece of A4, draw them a stick person in the middle, and then draw circles going out from them. And you know, who are the people closest and who are the people that are who are further out. And some people are going to be supportive for different reasons. So they might have a best friend who's great to go out and play with, but actually isn't very good at listening. So they might have their auntie who's much better at listening, who they can then go to. Then there's a page in the book really just about the person who died, and it's really important. A lot of working with bereaved people, children, young people and adults, is making sense and talking and going over and over and talking about the person who's died. So there's a page there for a little bit of detail about the person who's died. So things that they miss, memories of places that they've been to, a proud moment. And it's doesn't all have to be serious stuff, something funny that they did, memories about when they died. That big box, memories of when they died, thinking about what Lynn said about trauma, there might, you know, if for example, we've had some very traumatic times over the last 18 months, and you know, if they had a particular traumatic ending to the person's life, then I would say that's an area to proceed with caution, really, not to have the child go over the details of perhaps how the person was taken away in the ambulance and all of that, but definitely focusing on all the other stuff, you know, things that they miss and holidays and all those sorts of issues. There's a page here about just what are normal feelings. So for a young person, a normal feeling might be nothing. I don't actually feel anything. If they lose their nanny, and nanny lived, you know, 300 miles away, and they only saw her once a year, or didn't see her much at all, if the parents are separated, and somebody close, you know, mum's mum dies, they may not feel anything. And actually, it might be useful for you to give them permission to be able to say, do you know, I don't feel anything at all. They might feel guilty for not feeling anything. I popped down to the boot of my car at the end of the last session and grabbed some little sheets. There's a lady called Lindsay Brayman, who puts stuff out on the internet that you can download, and she's got a lot of these sorts of things. It's like a feelings wheel, emotions wheel. And sometimes our job is to give the children the vocabulary to talk about how they're feeling. I remember my son, I've got 3 children, they're all grown up. I remember my son when he was 12 or 13, used to say, oh, maths is stupid, don't like maths. He's now an engineer with a master's, but maths is stupid. Well, he wasn't really saying maths is stupid. What he was really wanted to say was, I don't understand what we're doing in maths at the moment, and actually I'm really scared, and it's making me feel really uncomfortable because I don't want to be the only one who doesn't get this. But he couldn't say that. I can't say that as a parent I sat him down and used anything like this. It was a long time ago, and I was too busy struggling through trying to be a parent. But this would have been very helpful. Although as a teenage boy, he probably ripped it up and chucked it across the room. So emotions, how do I feel inside? But also where in my body am I feeling things? So it's very helpful to know if I've got an achy neck, you know, is it because I'm feeling nervous? Am I really tense about something? I'm not looking forward to something, etc., etc. So there's a page about that. There is a page for any questions that they have, and sometimes as Christians, when we're dealing with bereavement, we want to give an answer to all the questions, and sometimes the best answer, when a person says, why did God allow that to happen? They don't want to know, you know, going back to Genesis about how original sin came into the world and we're in a fallen world. They probably want you to just go, oof, it's tough, isn't it? Things happen and we really don't understand it sometimes. And actually that's probably the best answer. So there's a page for questions to struggle through. I put a page in here as well for, called it Hidden Things, and it's got good things. There's a treasure chest down there, good things. So what are the hidden things? It might be what we talked about earlier about children who feel guilty because they don't feel anything, or they might be really cross because the person has died and they were just about to do the GCSEs, and in their head it's really messed their life up and they're angry. You know, the person's died. Why couldn't they have waited a bit longer, you know, in the case of a terminal illness or something like that? So that's a chance for them to talk about hidden stuff. When I go through that book, we don't always go through it starting at the very beginning. We might be talking away and I'll say, oh, actually, this might help. And we'll turn to a certain page and have a look at that. This page, it has some children say, oh, my friends started treating me really strange. It's almost like I've got two heads. So my lovely illustrator did a picture of this, whatever it is, alpaca llama with two heads. Why are you looking at me like I've got two heads? Just to assure them actually sometimes people can treat you differently. And then on the right hand side, the things that people say. If I was doing that, when I do the webinar for At a Loss, we spend a bit of time talking about unhelpful things. You know, Christians are great at this, aren't they? They're in a better place. Everything happens for a reason. Or they might say, well, God's taken them to be with him. Well, for a child, it's like, well, I need daddy. No, how dare God take daddy away? One of the worst, probably, grandpa's gone to sleep. No, I'm not going to go to sleep if that's what happens when you go to sleep. And on this sheet, there's a space for things that have been helpful as well, so not just unhelpful stuff. There's a page about anger, talking about it being okay to be angry, but it's important how you express that anger. One of the pages that I put in, because I'd worked with a young lady who she was in a family. Her mum died, and her dad and her brother, mum had allowed them to basically sit in the chair and she would just bring them everything. So they thought magically cups of tea or pints of beer would appear in your hand. You didn't have to do much really. And then mum died and the daughter had to, well, didn't have to, she took over from mum, and she wore herself out doing all the jobs that mum did. The boys didn't really do anything. And I met with her one day and she burst into tears and said, I can't do it. I just can't do it. I can't do my homework and clean the house and cook the meals. And things had got out of balance. And so there's a couple of pages there about have things got out of balance? Are you taking on too much? And who are you there for? Actually, only yesterday I was talking to a young person who said, oh, I haven't talked about the person who died because I felt like I needed to protect my mum and her sibling, their sibling. And I said, well, maybe this is the chance that you've got to talk about things now. This picture here, I guess, is based a little bit on something called The River of Life by Dr. Richard Wilson, which basically talks about how life is a bit like we're bobbing along in our boat, and then an event happens like a bereavement and we're plummeted down a waterfall. Our boat's shattered to pieces and we can be feeling like we're in a whirlpool of sadness. And this is quite good because the children from week to week can say where they're feeling they are. So how are you doing today? Feeling like you're right in the middle of the whirlpool, or are you having a bit of a break from your grieving? You know, is it a bit better this week? Or are you feeling a bit scared? Does it feel like there's some sharks that are going to get you? The elephant in the room, great saying. Is there an elephant in the room? Perhaps you're working with a young person where actually culturally or within the family, you don't talk about loss. So the person who died is never spoken about, and the child actually needs somewhere to go to talk about that person. Just a couple more pages. We've got one about letting go, having heavy feelings and having them float away or giving them to God. I did this exercise with some balloons once, real balloons, with a primary school age boy. And we blew up some balloons and he wrote on them his feelings about the person he'd lost. And we let them go and they floated across the playground and got stuck in a tree, which was not what we really wanted. I'd imagine them floating away and it was all great. So, yeah, so this is something that you can use to help them with the heavy stuff, heavy burdens that they're carrying. This page, Julia Stokes, who founded Winston's Wish, I think it was, let me use this from something that she produced, and I think it's really important. Are there things that you wish you'd said? You know, was it a sudden death? You know, had you not said I love you to the person who died? Had you not said sorry? This is a place to be able to deal with that. And memory boxes, organisations like Winston's Wish, Child Bereavement UK, have memory boxes that you can buy, and they'll tell you on their website how to help a child make a memory box, or you can get a shoebox, decorate it and use that with the child to put some precious things in. And then the final page in the book, just thinking about the future and imagining life as a story. And actually it might feel like you're in a valley at the moment, but actually there is a future ahead there, and you may not feel that you're there yet, and you'll go into that future incorporating your loss into that and taking the memory of the person who's died with you. And then there's the instructions how to use it at the end of that. So yeah, so it deals with, I mean, some of the things in theory about loss is making sense, remembering, finding a way of finding memories, knowing who the people are around you, who you can access for support, and things like that are really important. So yeah, I'll stop talking just to allow you to ask some questions, and then my plan is just to show you some books that I found helpful and different ways of working. I work with children pretty much every day of the week, and almost always have a couple of children who are processing loss. So yeah, we're a small group, so over to you.
That's such a good book, Pete. I love the fact that it's so based on pictures and cartoons, because I mean, one of my own children, but others as well, often others maybe the sort of children that are struggling with literacy, but to have pictures, you know, they may be saying, well, I want to look at that page, it was the one with the treasure box on or whatever, but they might not be able to read the words. I think it's so helpful, and even if they just sit colouring it, you know, and they're thinking about stuff, it's brilliant. Yeah,
it doesn't really matter.
It's really helpful.
Yeah, just sitting colouring it is valid as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as they don't colour the picture of me, or at least they do it nicely. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it looks excellent as well, and I've just been approved as a foster carer. I've got a child coming, a 10-year-old coming to live with me soon, who's experienced a lot of loss, but at very varying different types. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are, because I think a lot of that would be very relevant for her in the other, you know, the other kinds of losses that she's experienced, of not having, not being able to have contact with members of her family and things. But yeah, have you used it in that way at all? And
I've used it with looked after children. You'd have to get a copy and show it to the agency, probably see what they think. It's not been, I've not had much feedback from foster carers or agencies. I have had feedback from foster carers, and they've found it really useful.
Anna, we've got 2 adopted children. We've had 6 years, and we've had 2 major bereavements in their birth family, and I will be ordering these books. I mean, we've done lots of work with them, but they look so useful. Obviously it's a bit different with foster children.
And I think when we think about loss, also perhaps think about the secondary losses. So for example, if you think about a child who's, you know, I mean, children who are in care of just so many losses, but you think about a child who's lost their dad, for example. They've lost their dad, but what if it was dad who used to take them to gymnastics, and they can't go to gymnastics anymore, so they've lost contact with those children that they did gymnastics with, but they've also lost the sense of achievement that they were getting from doing gymnastics. They've lost the exercise. See what I mean? The losses are, it's not just the primary loss, which are huge.
I also think it's making me think as well that you might deal with it and think, well, we've dealt with it now when they were this age, but then I can kind of imagine that as they get older, they will then realise they'd lost more than they thought originally, because when they were a child is smaller, that, like you say, they might think, well, you know, Dad used to take me to football, but then a few years down the line they think, oh, hang on a minute, if he'd been there, I would now have this relationship. So they'll start, as they get older and develop, they'll recognise more things that they've lost. So it's worth, you know, it's making me think, oh, it's worth going back to this with my children, even though we've already done stuff with them. And that would be true for any child, not to sort of forget, well, their loss is over now and we did the work.
And cognitively they're developing. You know, a young child of 3 or 4 can say, my mummy died, have you seen my new dolly, in the same sentence. It's not because and the parent might go, oh my goodness, they're in denial. They're not in denial. That is what they can process, and they have no awareness of the permanency of death. Usually a pet. A pet is the first thing that they've, and then the parent goes out and tries to get an identical whatever goldfish is easy, isn't it? But not the best idea. It's a great opportunity to talk about death.
Obviously appreciate the importance of sort of an adult input and having those conversations, but if it was a child struggling to engage with adults, would you recommend the book just as something they could work through on their own?
Well, I guess it's better than nothing. It might be good you know, if you're recommending it to a parent, that the parent has a look at it, you know, if they've written in it, just see what they've done, and maybe use it as an opportunity to have a little chat. But it's designed to be safe to use, really. They can just pick it up and use it as a journal in a way, but it works best working with an adult.
Yeah, the problem is it's unfortunately it's the remaining parent that's also part of the problem and that the child won't engage with.
Yeah, well, it might help the parent to have something to go through. You know, they could actually sit down and go through it, or leave it with the child, you know.
Do you actually use the book with children when you're in the schools, Pete? And do you have to get permission for that, I would imagine?
Well, the school always get parental consent for me to work with the child. It's not particularly, I don't specifically say, can I use this book? The school will go to the parent and say, yeah, they'll get parental consent. I'm just going to look in my filing cabinet and see if I can actually find one that I'm using at the moment. Any other questions while I'm flicking through my stuff here?
I was going to ask you just a technical question. How do you know that Lindsay Bramman or Brayman you've mentioned? How you spell her surname?
Her surname, it's Lindsay, Lindsay,
Yeah.
Braman. I've somehow got on a mailing list, so I do get loads of stuff, but they're really good. There's some really good.
I went on her website when you mentioned her, and her website is lindsaybrayman.com.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And it's got loads. It was really good. It's got loads of.
It is. I think it's American. I think you have to pay for some of the stuff. It's like a £1.50 or something like that to download.
Right.
So it's not a lot.
There's lots of interesting articles on there as well that you can access.
There's a lot of stuff. The other, just keeping an eye on the time. Yeah, I think this is from her. This is like a Feelings pizza.
I was going to say, it looks like a pizza.
So what I've done, I think this comes with a blank pizza, and then I've cut out all the feeling words, and I've, for primary school children, I have them, then they can put them on the area that they want to put them on. So actually, within scared, there's a lot of other feeling words. Scared, there's nervous, there's afraid, there's all those. So that's the feeling pizza. So that's quite a good one. The other books, there's loads of stuff around, but I think Alison mentioned when they're not very good at, you know, perhaps they have special needs. There's an organisation called Beyond Words.
Oh, that'd be good.
Booksbeyondwords.co.uk, which is what it says. It's just pictures.
Pete, if you're going to show us something on your screen, could you unshare so actually you're of a decent size?
If you knew how tall I was, I'm not of a decent size. I'm 5'4", but yeah, I know what you mean. Hang on, stop shit. That's better.
So
thanks for
the picture is a bit small there, yeah.
This is a really good book. I mean, they've been around for years. If
that's
been around for
Pip
long
Wilson,
time.
isn't it?
Yeah. It was compulsory to start a course with this on your seat when you walked in, the blob tree, but it's still really good. You know, how do you feel today? You know, which blob represents you? You know, children can use these to express feelings. There are blob, all sorts of things in there. There's blob church, there's blob family, blob playground. playground, there we go. A bereaved child might be really struggling out on the playground, friends who are avoiding them because they don't know what to say, etc. The other main book, if you are doing this sort of work, working with children, you know, with their emotions regularly, is Draw on Your Emotions by Margot Sunderland. This is extortionately expensive, but it does have a whole load of worksheets in it. And the best one, I think, is this one. So this is called Thoughts in My Head. So I use this pretty much every week. And I'll just say something like, do you know what, when I've got loads going around my head, it really helps me to just stick stuff down on a piece of paper and sort it all out. So, and yeah, it's very simple. And if you're working with a child over a period of time, you can go back the next week and you can look at your thoughts on in your head sheet. I'll hold this up far enough away so you can't read anything that's on it, just so you can see. There's a lot on it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you don't need that worksheet to do that exercise. If you can draw a head with a sad face on it, that's probably enough. The other one in this book is First Aid Kit. So for the script for that is, when we're hurt, when we're physically hurt, cut our knee or whatever, we go to the first aid kit and we get a plaster. But what about when we're hurting inside, our feelings are hurting?
That's clever.
And you can get, a few years ago, I managed to persuade Smith and Nephew, the pharmaceutical company, to give me a whole load of travel first aid kits without the kit, the bags, the zippy bags with the crosses on. And then you can just say, well, what are some things that would help you when you're hurting? So they might say, well, I'd phone my friend, or watch my favourite film, have a bath, whatever. And then they can write those into the squares. Or if you make a first aid kit, obviously they can make something. I mean, you could do Play-Doh, you could do whatever. So it's all about, really, it's helping children talk about feelings is the most important thing, and affirming them that their feelings are valid. Validating their feelings is really the key thing. But I think when you're working with young people, you've also got to be flexible, because sometimes they'll come in and actually they've fallen out with their mate and they don't want to talk about the fact that granny died. They want to talk about the fallout with their friends. So you might have the best session planned, and you could have just to throw it out the window because that's not what they want to do. And you can just go with that. But yeah.
So is all your work on a one-to-one basis, Pete?
It's not, it is at the moment, but over the years I've done groups. So I've done groups for bereaved children, but I've also done groups where bereaved children have children whose parents are separated, and we talk about loss in its broadest sense. And you'd think it would be, well, it's all up for you, you haven't lost your dad, but that doesn't really happen. They do work together okay, and they look at a family sort of outside of their situation. There's a little play that goes through the sessions that I've got. I do have some material that somebody's kindly allowed me to share with others for primary school age, which is a course called Caterpillars, which is really good, which you can, I will send you if you want to email me, pete@atalos.org. Happy to send you that. I mean, I can keep going with stuff behind me here for the whole day. But if you're thinking about from a different angle, children who are just yearning for someone, maybe it's a parent who's left, or maybe it's someone who's died. Another Margot Sunderland book there's several of these. The Frog Who Longed for the Moon to Smile. It's about a frog who once saw the moon smile at him, and he's transfixed with this, and he just spends every day looking up at the sky, hoping the frog will smile, the moon will smile, and eventually his froggy friends come along and say, actually, if you, well, the very wise blackbird comes along, there he is, and he says, actually, if you turn around, you'll see you've got all your froggy friends, and they've always been here, but actually you've not noticed they're there for you. So it's all about yearning, and that's a really good book. Yeah, questions, any specific things, because you came on this one probably looking for some help, and those resources might be helpful, but they might not have quite given you what you need in whatever time we have, not very long.
Can I ask you something? So somebody asked you if you'd done this kind of work with groups of people. I mean, I'm involved with a small group of people looking at what we have generally called fatherlessness, for the want of just a thing to call the group. Because I suppose the principal member of the group is a school chaplain, and she, in 1 year, I think it was 2016, saw 250 young people in her school of 1,500 people, secondary school. Mm. And every single one of those children, all 250, had an issue with fatherlessness, for a want of a better term. It wasn't a parenting issue. That might have been grandma's died, or the dog's died, or some other thing. But as part of the package, every single child came with some issue around their father, absent, dead, different ones coming and going. Latest dad's a bastard, you know. Yeah. Always an issue around that. And that probably means that about 90% of the school are in the same position. Because these were not particular children, they were just from the general population. So we're trying to develop some ways of actually dealing with emotions and loss amongst them. But I'm wondering, how many of the schools that you're working, have you ever thought about a response that's on a different kind of level? I mean, it seems to me with the ubiquity of some of these losses, that such a large proportion of young people in a place like Hull, I'm talking about Hull, quite as bad. I
was born in Hull.
Anybody's developed any responses that are sort of for a group, you know, or how do you pray? How do you put that before God, that such a significant proportion of young people are experiencing some of the same feelings? I'm just wondering if anybody's got any experience of that, because we can individuals and we're trying, but how do you deal with the big?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely an issue, and I see it all the time, and it's not always that the father isn't in the house, it's they're not available.
Yeah.
I was born in Hull, so I'm
right, really? Oh, well. Congratulations.
Beverley High Road, just off Beverley Road. But yeah, it's massive, isn't it? And I think of one boy that I work with every week in a primary school, and his parents had never been to an assembly, and I went to the assembly. It was online at the time, and all I do every week, I go in and I play football for half an hour with him. Well, I don't play football. He kicks the ball at me, and I try and kick it somewhere, and that's it. And it's made, according to the teachers, it's actually made a huge difference. So I'm not so sure it's necessarily the content of no amazing course is necessarily going to do the job. It's just literally some adults giving them time. And he can't physically, he struggles to sit down and talk about how he's doing. I make him do it, and then can we go out now? Can we go outside? Yeah, we can go outside. Oh, time is up. It says time is up. I think we've got
54 seconds left.
Sorry?
54 seconds left.
54 seconds, well, loads of time. So my email address is pete@atalos.org if you're interested in anything I've talked about. And the little book is available on the atalos.org/shop website for £5, I think. And if you want bulk copies, contact me direct, because you'll save on the postage and packing. So yeah, or just email me if you've got any more questions.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
Brilliant
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.